Hello and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast. This is episode 45. We're talking about Kiss of Death, the 1995 crime drama thriller where a reformed convict goes undercover with the help of an angry detective to ensnare a psychotic mobster. I'm one of your hosts, Derek, and I've got your other host, Ryan, right here.
That's right, I'm right here.
You are. One Take Ryan, as he's
That's
known
right.
in the biz.
It's true. Ask anybody in the biz, they'll know me.
They do. They all say it.
All the time. Constantly.
This film stars David Caruso. It co-stars Samuel L. Jackson, Helen Hunt, Stanley Tucci, Ving Rhames, Anthony Heald. I don't know why I said Harold. Philip Baker Hall, Michael Rapaport, and of course, Nicolas Cage.
Indeed.
So Ryan, how do we do this? What do we do here on our show?
Well, I want to start off by saying that I'm really disappointed in the world.
Just as a whole?
I just want to make this tiny point about how disappointed I am in the entire world.
Okay.
Because I'm not saying this movie deserves to belong in the Holy Trinity. But as far as 90s Nick Cage movies that we have watched, I was thoroughly entertained by this movie. And, you know, a good portion of that was Nicolas Cage's performance. But just overall, this was a solid 90s movie. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do.
My disappointment in the world is that it's not well known for, like, among Nicolas Cage fans, because it should be.
Well, look, this movie's extremely hard to find. Number one, like it's got this crazy cast, and I think that's unfair. It was nominated for one award, just one, and it was David Caruso as worst new star at the Razzies. Worst new star? Really? Like, I'm not saying that this is the greatest movie ever or anything like that, but yeah, in the grand scheme of mid-90s action flicks, crime thrillers,
Solid.
I thought this was decent,
On par.
right? It's a remake of a 1947 film of the same name, which is much easier to find if you want to watch that version. But yeah, I mean, look, this is an imperfect film. We'll get to it, but like, I liked it. I thought it was decent.
Yeah, I was thoroughly entertained the whole movie. There was no part where I was falling asleep or like, ready for it to end. I was just engaged. So, yeah.
I mean, it's got a few of the tropes we're used to seeing. It's why we have Keijo Bingo, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
They become tropes for a reason, right? So, yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, yeah, solid movie. But we're going to get into it now. So, one of my favorite things about doing these 90s Nick Cage movies is looking at the cars.
Mm.
We've mentioned on the podcast before that Derek and I are car guys. We don't bring it into the podcast a ton, but occasionally there'll be a shout out. And right at the beginning, boom, red AW11 MR2 in the junkyard. Loved it. It was funny because the first like 2 minutes of this movie, the whole intro is panning over junkyards and like random car businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole time I was like, ooh, second gen Celica Super right there. Ooh, like pointing out all these cars, which my girlfriend was thoroughly excited about. She shared my full excitement of all those cars. So that was great. That was sarcasm too. She was probably very annoyed by me doing that, but whatever. She was supportive. So yeah, the first few minutes of this movie it's just like the camera panning over this street that apparently is only car businesses and junkyards and stuff like that. And I think it's implied that they're all like fronts for, different mafia or gangster type activities. Also, during this intro, we get what is a contender for the worst font choice of any movie we've watched so far for intro letters.
For the title credits?
Yes. Like as it's panning over and it's like introducing all the actors and everything,
Mhm.
Yeah, there were like italic bubble letters. It was just
Yeah,
really bad, staggeringly bad.
it was an interesting take on it too, because this is opening credits, and they're in alphabetical order, which you don't
Yeah.
normally see in opening credits. And then the very last credit uh, does the like wipe away behind like a street pole,
Oh God, yeah.
but none of the other ones did that. It was just the last one,
Man,
which
I
I
tell
thought
you
was
what,
weird.
sometimes these graphic designers that do these things are just like, we're gonna go a little nuts today. And that's their excitement for a long time.
I
It
mean, maybe
keeps
they were
going.
like, "We're gonna show them that we can do this, and we'll find out if they like it or not." And then they never got an answer, and so they
They
just
just
did it
kept
the
the
one
one
time.
in. Yeah.
Yeah,
And they were like, we're also gonna pick this really horrible font and see if they notice. I mean, it was really bad. I don't complain about font choice in movies, but it was strikingly bad. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to know the name of that font, but I hope it's gone now forever.
I mean, it was supposed to be edgy, I guess.
Was it? It looked like a children's movie font.
I mean,
It was
I don't.
literally bubble letters.
It was weird. The
Anyway,
italics threw me off, I think.
yeah, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that, but yeah, it was really bothersome. It still bothers me, clearly. So kudos to you, graphic designer. You've affected me 25 years later.
But for the intro, I thought it's just worth noting that the shop that Michael Rapaport works in is actually a very real, full operating business that's been in Queens for over 30 years. So they actually got worked in a real shop to shoot that film.
I wonder how they got approved for the murders.
Well,
Um.
I hate to break it to you, but nobody actually died.
Oh, okay.
Spoilers,
Hmm. Not
yeah,
that realistic of a movie, I guess.
no.
So yeah. We see the main character of the movie. What's his name? Jimmy
Hmm.
Kilmartin, I think they call him most of the time.
Yep, that's Caruso's character.
And he is with this baby. He's like going to a house and there's like a babysitter there
Hmm.
and a woman, and he goes in there and is talking to the babysitter and tells her she's good to go, and then his wife goes somewhere, or the woman, I think we learn that she's his wife at this point, goes somewhere, and so
Hmm.
he's left alone with the baby, and it shows him sleeping on a couch, or not, maybe not sleeping, but laying on a couch with a baby on top of him.
I
And
think he
then
nodded off.
probably, yeah, I mean, I imagine most people probably would at that point.
Yeah.
But then somebody knocks on the door and it doesn't wake the baby up, which is super unrealistic because I'm
Yeah.
based on what I know about people that have babies, any tiny noise will send them crazy screaming. So, yeah, he picks the baby up off of himself, sets the baby on the couch, and then just goes to the door.
Hmm.
Is that a thing that people do? Leave their babies just like laying face down on a couch?
I mean, it's not something I personally would have done, but there's a lot of things that happen in this movie that I personally
It was
wouldn't
the
have done. So.
90s, they just let stuff happen, and if it kills the kid, it kills the kid. But for the most part, if you survived, survival of the fittest, Darwinism type stuff going on there.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, he threw the baby on the couch and then
Just
walks
tossed it.
around the corner and goes and answers the door, and there's a scumbag looking guy, the biggest scumbag you've ever seen in your life.
Michael Rapaport's character, Ronnie.
Yeah, who is like, there's no redeeming qualities about this person at all. He's just a jerk. He's asking David Caruso's character to do this job with him, implying that he was did some bad stuff previously. And he says, "No, I'm going straight. I got a kid now, blah 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 blah." And he just guilt trips the shit out of him.
Well,
Apparently
because we
they're
find out.
cousins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
so
he
it's
guilt trips the
family.
shit out of him. He said that what's the name? I can't remember the name.
Little
Little
Junior.
Junior. Little
Yeah.
Junior is gonna break his body or something if he doesn't do this job. And he shows him his hand, and he has like a finger splint on one of his fingers, where apparently Little Junior went nuts, and that's the least amount of damage we've seen Little Junior do to anybody in this entire movie. So it's like a totally different character did that, because from what we see of Little Junior throughout this movie, breaking somebody's finger is like that's like his morning breakfast. It's
I
so
mean,
little.
not to jump ahead, too much, but there is the guy at the strip club.
I mean, that was worse, I think.
You think that was worse than Broken Bones?
Hmm.
I thought it was more
A
clever.
finger is barely a broken bone. I mean, let's
I
get
mean,
real.
there
Everybody's
are.
broken fingers. Okay, so he agrees to do this job because he can't stand to see his cousin get killed or whatever.
Mhm.
And so then we cut to the like scene where all these trucks are.
I think it's important to note it's the middle of the night.
Yes.
All right, and he
And he just left
leaves
the kid with the
with
babysitter.
the babysitter who I guess lives in the same building.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's
It is available
Rosie,
24/7.
24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you go too long, doesn't matter. She'll be there for 2, 3 days. Doesn't care. She doesn't have any plans ever.
Hmm.
But yeah, he shows up to like this, I don't know, this very crimey looking place, full of crime, and I don't know, like how would you describe it? It's like the mob hangout. So picture the most crimey looking area you've ever seen, full of stolen cars,
There
and
are
they're
a
all
lot of
on
like empty parking lots and gated areas
right.
that like no, yeah.
It's a business district owned by the mob essentially, and there's just a bunch of car carriers just parked next to each other, and they're walking around one talking about how he's going to get beaten up by Junior Brown, little Junior, and this giant freaking hulked out arm shoots out and grabs Michael Rapaport's character by the neck, and I'm like, oh my god, did they get Hulk Hogan for this movie or something? But no, it's Nick Cage, and he is looking beefy, fully beefed.
Can you believe that he did this and Leaving Las Vegas in the same year?
He wore a lot of long sleeve shirts for Leaving Las Vegas because that would have been less believable. But yeah, I mean, he is like Con Air level jacked in
Right,
this
but
movie.
like he didn't do Con Air yet. That was
And
in
that's
two.
what I mean. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
later.
yeah.
But this is like his intro to getting beefy for movies.
Well, because
I
like
mean,
before this,
he was in good shape in other movies like
of
Moonstruck and stuff
course,
like that. But
he was all. I don't. He's never been like he was never in bad shape when he was younger. He always looked good,
yeah,
right? But he was like a thinner, leaner guy, and like in this is 1995. In 1994 was Guarding Tess,
yeah,
right? And it could happen to you. And so he went from that year to this the
it
next
could
year,
happen to you. That's a big transformation between those two.
right?
Because he wasn't, I mean, he was in good shape, but he was not beefy, I wouldn't
No.
say.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I think like this is where maybe this is the movie where like he realized that he could kind of do the action role,
Right.
and because then he does like he follows this up 2 years later with Con Air.
Yeah. And he, in this movie, is wearing a tank top for a lot of the movie.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, we see that arm reach out and grab the guy by the neck, and he's like threatening him. He says, I only see 3 guys, and there's 4 trucks here, or something like that. I don't know. And they figure it out. There's a guy sleeping. Oh, I do want to touch on this. Well, first of all, Nick Cage has a really weird accent. I feel like he was trying to go for a Bronx style accent, but
Yeah.
it wasn't. It wasn't quite there, and it kind of came and went throughout the movie. I love you, Nick. This is early days. Okay, I know today you would nail it, but um, so he sees that one of the driver guys is sleeping in the car, and man, the '90s were a different time because this character opens the door, Nick Cage's character, and he literally, I mean, it was a stunt man. So
But still,
he probably jumped, but like he got thrown. There was no cuts or anything. He got thrown out of a full size like semi cab
mhm.
into another semi cab and landed on like his neck and shoulders and face.
And it's
Like
a wide
and it
shot.
wasn't a mat. Like
No.
you could see this is like like a gravel or like concrete ground. I mean, he got slammed.
Hmm.
I was in shock over that. It was kind of like the vampire's kiss scene with like the gun in the mouth.
Yeah.
It was just like the way they had to make these things work in those movies was crazy, dude. But
It,
it worked.
Yeah, I mean it's an intense scene. I like the way that it's shot because it makes it feel more real.
Visceral, yeah. I mean,
You
because
know,
it's not like modern day movies where there's like 3 cuts and they would have a mat and it would be hidden, the mat would be hidden,
right?
but this is a just single shot, no moving of the camera, no panning, no nothing, and he just gets slammed into the side of the semi, and then like into the concrete.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was visceral for sure. So kudos to that stuntman. I mean, if there was a stuntman award out there, then he deserved to be nominated for sure.
Right.
Um, so they go and they deliver these cars, and they take that guy that got slammed and put him in the passenger seat of one of the cars because they said they can't just leave him there. They're trying to establish that Kilmartin is not like the whole world's most horrible person. He's just a guy in a bad situation. So
Well,
he
this
saves this guy. But literally everybody in this movie is an asshole. So
yes. This is
it's
like the Nick Cage, like most of Nick Cage's movies are like this, where like everybody's terrible, but the lead is a little less terrible.
especially in this time period. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like maybe his more modern movies are not that way, but definitely like 80s, 90s, and maybe early aughts, he was like that.
Hmm.
I don't know what it was. But yeah, he was. They're trying to make him seem slightly less crappy than everybody else. So the guy that got thrown, got put in the passenger seat of the car. So they deliver, or they take the most suspicious looking band of vehicles driving together ever. It's literally, they're not trying to distance them or space them out. You would think they
Well,
would.
no, they called that out. So Little Junior told him to don't stagger, just haul ass.
Oh, okay.
And one of the guys, I forget if it was Caruso or somebody else, basically said that, like that was a bad idea.
Yeah, because it shows a
Yeah.
bunch of wide shots of these things driving together, and it is the most suspicious looking caravan you've ever seen in your life.
Well, they're
It's
cutting the
just,
people on the side of the road watching it like it's a spectacle.
yeah, there's like 10 cars or 12 cars on each of these car carriers, and they're all like BMWs and like Acuras and, stuff that's fairly high end, Lexuses.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Decent stuff.
Yeah, it's not cheap cars. So yeah, it was it was not suspicious at all, is what I'm saying. So they get there, and big surprise, the cops show up, and they're pulling everybody out of the cars, and Samuel L. Jackson shows up and starts telling Nick Cage, or not Nick Cage, Jimmy Kilmartin, David Caruso's character, to get out of the car. And so he starts to get out of the car, and as soon as he opens the door, or say maybe Samuel L. Jackson opens the door, I can't remember, the guy in the passenger seat pulls out a gun and shoots Samuel L. Jackson's character in the face, and David Caruso's character like holds up his hand
Yeah.
to block the bullet, I guess, and it just goes through his hand. Big surprise. But
Wouldn't have
yeah,
gone through my hand.
right, exactly. You have to work out your hands more. But yeah, the bullet goes through the hand into Samuel L. Jackson's face, and then the like 8 cops just start bang, 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 bang. I mean, they must have shot this guy 40 times. It was unreal the amount of times they shot this guy.
But somehow they didn't hit
Yeah,
Jimmy at all.
he was fine. Kilmartin
These guys
was
are good
fine.
shots. I'll tell you that.
But they shot this guy. They riddled this guy. That truck will never be used again because there's so much bodily fluid in there.
Lovely.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad. And they just keep going, and the guy's like, shaking around back and forth because his body is just getting hammered with bullets. It was ridiculous. Really weird scene. So yeah, they take him into jail, and his cousin gets away,
Mhm.
but Kilmartin takes the fall. And Stanley Tucci, who was great in this, as usual, he is playing the DA, and he is, man, high pressure DA. I mean, he plays that school role of like scumbag DA,
So
willing to
well.
do anything to get the confession very well. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so he's pressuring him for a confession, and he's not ratting out anybody. So we cut forward a little bit, or he gets a visitation from his wife, and his wife is upset. Kilmartin does, because of he was supposed to be out.
Right.
And why did you do it? Why did you do it? Why did you do it? What I thought was interesting about this is that they had we've all seen jail visitations in movies, but in this one, it was just like weird half windows that you could like easily climb over and touch the other person.
Yeah.
I don't
He
know if
kept
that
getting.
was common in the 90s, but
I don't know. I mean, he kept getting yelled at for it. I've never seen that in another movie.
me either.
So I found that odd. Maybe they were shooting on location at a prison or something, and that's just how it was. I don't know.
Me either, but I thought that was worth noting for sure
Yeah.
because it was, yeah, he kept like reaching over and touching her face and getting yelled at.
Number 5.
Yeah. And so this is where we, after she leaves, it starts cutting to the wife with the cousin,
And this is Helen Hunt's character, by
Helen
the
Hunt's
way.
character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bev.
And he is like being very creepy with her. He's inappropriate. This is his cousin's wife, but he's like hitting on her and touching her and doing things that in general cousins shouldn't do to their cousins' wives. But they said that he's gonna, or they told him his wife is gonna be taken care of, so he's paying her like $160 a week out of his own pocket or whatever. He makes sure to say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then
So
offers him a job.
it's important to note that like the reason that this is supposed to be happening is because because he didn't rat anybody out. It turns out this is all a very big deal.
Yeah, big
And
operation.
little Big Junior Brown, right, is like a big mob boss dude. And I guess Jimmy kind of knew that. And so he figured his wife's protected,
Yeah.
right, is the idea. So he's thinking his wife and kid are safe.
And taken care of because they
Yeah.
have a code where if
Right.
somebody is doing that, goes to jail, then they will take care of them. And so he says that he's paying her $160 out of pocket every week or something. And then he says he's also, if she wants more money, going to give her a job working at his salvage yard, essentially chop shop. So he does, and he drives her to work. And he was driving a Z32 300ZX silver for anybody that is interested in that kind of thing. 2-door, or not 2+2, regular T-top Z32, which is fun. And then we run into Nick Cage's character again because Michael Rapaport's character has to go meet with Little Junior and Big Junior. And when they go to this club,
It's a strip club, by the way, which is another common. Maybe we should add that to the bingo card.
I mean, nudity, I thought covered it, but yeah. So one of the best scenes I've seen in any Nick Cage movie so far is the introduction to Nick Cage's character in this
so
in this version. He's literally got a girl. You don't really see him. You just kind of see like a body like bench pressing a girl, and then it zooms out. And you're realizing that this is Nick Cage in a tank top bench pressing a woman. And it looked like he was legitimately doing it too, because I didn't notice like any wires or like it didn't seem like any part of her body was suspended by anything.
It looked real to me.
And he keeps doing it. He doesn't do it just like one rep for the camera. Like he does 3 or 4 reps.
He does more than that, man, because they keep cutting back to him and he keeps doing reps. Like,
yeah,
he gets to 40 and he's at 20 something when the scene starts.
Yeah.
So
he's got her like laying on her side. And he's just bench pressing her. And I mean, it's a small woman. Like it's not.
It's a human being, though.
It is a human being.
You know,
but
it's a great scene.
It is. It is a wonderful scene. Unexpected.
Yeah.
But welcome. Yeah, they say there's some casual discrimination thrown about.
Was there?
Yeah, they dropped the F word.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
For gay people.
Yeah.
Yeah, they dropped that word, and I don't remember what the context was, but it was the 90s that was used a lot more unnecessarily back then. Now, there's a necessary time to use that, but, you know. Then we hear the cousin goes to talk to Michael Rapaport's character goes to talk to Big Junior.
Right.
And he's questioning about his payments to the wife and everything. And we find out that he's supposed to be paying the wife like $400 a week.
Yeah, he's getting the money, right?
Yeah.
He's basically pocketing like $250 a week and giving her $150 a week
and a job
because he's a sleazeball.
Right. And he lies to Big Junior about it.
What kind of guts, man? How dumb do you have to be?
Well, the dude is not smart at any point in this movie. He's just an asshole and a skis.
Right? Like, it's one thing to do criminal stuff. Like, these guys are like, they're all just chop shop, auto theft guys, right? But like, you're lying to the head mob dude.
Yeah, it's bold.
Right, right. Like, it just seems like a bad idea.
But I think at this point we should note that the the gang or the mafia or whatever this is, it's the movie is having a hard time deciding if they're like a 70s mafia or 60s mafia or if they're like a 90s breakdance club
Yes.
because they use some weird 90s lingo. I lived through the whole 90s. I don't remember any of this lingo ever being used. But also like he randomly starts playing 90s songs and like hitting the beatbox and stuff. Anyway, at this point I have a specific, sometimes I do if there's a quote that specifically stands out to me,
Hmm.
and I like to highlight the brilliant writing of the movie. Nick Cage at one point goes, "Hey, what's the what?"
Yeah, what's the what? That's so
Which
great.
again, not a thing that anybody ever said in the
I mean,
'90s.
I said it all the time. I don't know.
Okay, I take it back.
But
Derek
you were
said it all the
talking,
time.
you know.
But from my recollection, and now granted, I'm a Midwest, whatever kind of guy. So maybe that was like East Coast or West Coast slang. I don't know. But yeah, what the what? What's the what?
It sounds like something they would have put in, like, I don't know, Saved by the Bell or something that like adults would think was slang
Yeah.
that the kids would be saying
That's
or
what I'm saying,
something.
like, oh, how are you doing, fellow kids meme type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Um so he gets back to the chop shop and Helen Hunt's character is there and they watch him. A guy shows up trying to sell a stolen car, and so they go beat the shit out of him. Basically, the guys that work there, they beat the crap out of him.
Yeah, that seemed excessive.
Right before that, though, Michael Rapaport's character offers Helen Hunt's character a beer, and she makes it clear that she does not drink. That's not something she does anymore. She's sober. And then this happens, and so he goes out, beat the shit out of this guy. Um, and then goes back in, and we see right before he goes back in, and while she's watching this happen, she's drinking the beer. So whatever the stress from this is causing her to drink again, and she eventually gets like pass out drunk. I'm assuming because she ends up waking up at his place.
Yeah, I think you flipped these two scenes.
I
The scene,
did, but it
yeah.
doesn't matter.
Well, because the only reason it matters is because when they're at the strip club, she's drinking at the bar.
Sure, but I mean the
And
drinking has already happened.
yeah,
It's
but like he's like feeling her up a little bit over there, and you can see that the two juniors, Big Junior and Little Junior, like are noticing this. And I thought this was going to come up later because they clearly see what's happening, and they're clearly both unhappy about it.
yeah, but it doesn't come up.
But it doesn't come up. Like,
And
went
so
nowhere.
she ends up waking up. Was it at his place or her place? I can't remember.
No, it's his place, and she's got all of her clothes on, but her jeans are like undone.
Unbuttoned, yeah. So it's kind of implied that
Maybe something
potentially something
happens.
inappropriate happened, but she gets up and takes his car, his silver second gen 300ZX T-top.
Was this scene hard for you
Um,
to watch,
it
Ryan?
was hard for me to watch. Well, you don't actually see it, so I was
That's
okay
true.
with that. But
Yeah.
yeah, she backs out of the driveway and instantly gets smashed into by a semi, which is another recurring theme in these Nick Cage movies. That women get killed by semi drivers. If you'll remember the City of Angels.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was a logging truck, I guess, but I still count that.
Well, I think this was a dump truck, but
Yeah,
big
big
trucks.
truck, big trucks murdering women. Yeah,
You need a
that's
CDL to
right,
drive, you
exactly.
know?
So yeah, my next note for that was, and she's dead, because it was great to see Helen Hunt, and then she's
For
dead
five minutes,
after like 7 minutes of screen time. Yeah, she's dead.
right? Like an Academy Award nominated actor, and she's gone.
Right, and so Kilmartin gets permission to go to his wife's funeral. And while he's there, he's talking to his cousin and he's talking to the babysitter and finds out that his cousin, that she had spent the night at his cousin's house. And so he says that I want to talk to the DA. And he gives the DA information. I thought this was actually pretty clever.
Oh yeah,
He
yeah.
gives
No,
the
Jimmy's
DA
smart.
information on some stuff that's happened, and he gives him like basically everybody's name other than
Ronnie.
Ronnie, his cousin. So it makes it look like he's the rat, and he's ratted out on multiple crimes because he's the only one that didn't get ratted out. Um, and this is around the point where I noticed that in this movie, Nick Cage is basically wearing all white all the
Yeah,
time,
like the whole
which I
time.
thought was an interesting choice. There is one time when he's wearing like a shirt that has some patterns on it, but it's still basically white.
Hmm.
But it's a good look. If you're trying to emulate that look, you'll need a white tracksuit and a tank top, and
Pretty
don't zip
much.
up the tracksuit. It's just leave it unzipped and the white tank top underneath, and you're good to go.
You also need a really glorious goatee because man,
A really
like
nice goatee,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, and some muscles. Of course, if you're wearing a tracksuit, you might not notice those. Um, but then he Nick Cage's character goes to the salvage yard, and he's like, "Hey, Roddy, I need to talk to you." And
just like that.
just like that. And they're putting Ronnie walks in and they're putting up like sheeting over the windows, and they're all wearing like American Psycho style
Yeah, it
raincoats.
was
And he's
very
like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" It's
such a
like,
moron.
yeah, he's just a giant idiot. He's like, "Are we cleaning or something?" Like, and then Nick Cage's character goes to the boombox and puts on "Jump Around," jump up, and get down. And then he beats him to death
Yeah.
with his fists. So that was fun. Nothing says 90s more than beating somebody to death to that soundtrack.
No more Ronnie.
Yeah. So then we get our reintroduction to Samuel L. Jackson's character because they want more information from Jimmy
Right.
Kilmartin. And I maybe you noticed this, maybe it was just me, I don't know, but Samuel L. Jackson's scar from getting shot in the face changes from scene to scene. The very first time we see it, it's like brown skin, like he's a black
Mhm.
man, so his normal skin tone, but you see the scar. But then in like the next scene, it's like all pink and weird looking,
Yeah.
like he like scarred over skin, and it kind of changes between different looks throughout the whole movie, which I thought was weird.
No, I think that that's a fair criticism.
And then we jump to 3 years later. Oh, I think we should note that Samuel L. Jackson is constantly wiping his eye with tissues.
Well, yeah, so the injury did something to his nerves in his eye or whatever, and he's very sensitive to sunlight and all these
So
other
he's
things.
constantly crying, yeah.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, 3 years later, and Stanley Tucci is now trying to pin down Lil Junior, which apparently he was not doing that at all before, but now he is after 3 years.
I mean, yeah,
Everybody's an asshole, is my
everybody.
next note.
Well, because there's so Jimmy is up. Jimmy Caruso's character Jimmy is up for parole, right? And basically the DA and these two cops, Samuel L. Jackson's character and the other guy, um, they they're like basically extorting Jimmy and implying that if he doesn't play ball, that
He might not get out.
exactly,
Right.
yeah,
Because he
um,
wants to get little Junior. So
right.
yeah, so he says, "Okay, I'll play ball, but this is it. I'm out. Once this is done, I'm done."
It is worth noting that the whole time he's in prison after his wife died, Rosie, the babysitter, continues to bring Jimmy's daughter in to visit him, and they've gotten quite close.
Yeah, and then they get remarried as soon as he gets out of jail. Or
That
he gets
was
remarried.
that was very weird for me.
Man, yeah, I think it was I don't there's probably a name for the like situation, but like when a young or younger person grows up with an older person and like feels very close to them for a long time, and then that person goes through something really traumatic and they want to be there to comfort them and end up getting like romantically involved. I feel like there's a name for that, not like Stockholm syndrome, but
Yeah,
similar kind of situation. um but yeah, they get married, and we see more Samuel L. Jackson wiping his eye, which got to be like, I get it, I totally get it, but I don't think it adds anything to the story at any point. So it was a little distracting at
yeah.
a certain point. Like, why we know he has damage to his eye. Like, okay. He also hates. We haven't really mentioned that, but he hates Kilmartin and blames him for this thing that happened.
Well,
Even though
for now.
Martin got shot in the hand, he just hates him. Um, so yeah, then we get a scene of I didn't know if you consider this Nick Cage dancing. I did, but where he's like jumping around and like doing something like that in front of the strippers
Oh
at the strip
yeah,
club.
yeah. I think that's fair. I
Because I
think that
mean, he was
counts.
literally playing a song called "Jump Around" earlier, where
Yeah,
they're encouraging you to jump around as a form of dancing. So I feel like
yeah.
that was close enough.
No, that's fair.
And we got the nudity card there because we start seeing some titties, which is
Yes.
pretty common. Fun fact: maybe you don't, maybe you know this, maybe you don't. But in the
Okay.
'90s, they would oftentimes shoehorn nudity and sex scenes into movies to get them the R rating, because in the '90s the R rating was not the kiss of death that it is these days. Movies still
Yeah.
made a lot of money when they were R rated,
Hmm.
and people would go and like rewatch them a lot. So a lot of movies would be PG-13, but they didn't want to be PG-13, so they bumped up the rating by just adding a gratuitous that nudity or sex scene. And that when I learned that like made so much sense to me why there's these
Right.
random ass like naked females in movies for no reason. But
Yeah. That just explains a lot.
yeah. So he starts trying to get close. Jimmy tries to start getting close to Lil Junior. And Lil Junior takes him out on this job where he's taking like 5 guys out to go boost some cars.
Hmm.
And uh Jimmy goes up to boost his car, and there's a dog in it that starts barking at him, and he says he hates dogs.
Right. What's that about?
I'm like, there's very few. I mean, I don't personally know any good people in my life that hate dogs.
No.
So I generally regard a character in a movie as an asshole if they hate dogs for some reason.
I mean, I think that that's totally fair.
Yeah,
And look, man, you're trying to break into somebody else's car and
yeah,
you want to blame the dog?
right. I
Like,
mean, that dog is just living its life, man, doing its job.
yeah,
But then we get more nudity, lots of stripping in this movie, lots of naked, topless women in this movie.
quite a bit.
Lots of gratuitous Nick Cage chest hair shots because his tank top seems extra low cut. Now I don't know if you noticed this. He has this very special tank top. So a tank top normally has like a not a V-neck, but a low neck, right, and straps. Well, on his tank top, if you like under the armpit,
Hmm.
there was a like circular opening. Like
Oh yeah,
it
yeah,
connects under the armpit like a normal
hmm,
tank top, but then there's a circular opening underneath that. And
yeah,
I kind of wonder what the deal is with that. If that was like just the tank top they bought for this movie, or if Nick Cage requested that so that he could like get more flexibility or something.
yeah. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean,
But I've never seen
typically,
a tank top like that.
I mean, maybe that was just a mid '90s thing. I don't
It
know.
could be I wasn't wearing a lot of those during that time, so it's
Yeah,
possible. Um, but yeah, it also showed a lot of his chest hair in the front. It was like extra low cut, so you could get some of that juicy chest hair.
juicy,
Um,
juicy.
we also get to see him smoking, which is another box on our bingo card.
Smoking?
I think it is, isn't it?
No.
Smoking should be. We've talked about it before.
We've got does drugs or drinks alcohol, but just like
I
a
don't know.
cigarette,
I've
like
got
he's
smoking on the list.
it's not a on the
Okay, well,
cards.
it should be.
Sorry, buddy.
Um, yeah. So he's at this club, and Derek kind of alluded to this scene earlier in the podcast, but there's a guy that, as assholes do, harassing the strippers at the club, the dancers, and putting his hands on them and everything else. And so Nick Cage's character hears the woman yelling for help, and so he sends his bouncer over to grab the guy and bring it over to him. And Jimmy is sitting next to him the whole time. And so he lights up a cigarette, or he has Jimmy light a cigarette for him.
Hmm.
And so he does, and he's holding it in his fingers, and he has the guy put his hand out on the table and keep it there while he's having this talk with him. And so you think that he's going to burn the guy's hand with the cigarette or something, which is a pretty weak ass punishment for somebody sexually harassing somebody, in my opinion. But you think that's what's going to happen. But guess what? Plot twist, that's not what's going to happen. He makes the guy get up on stage and in his underwear and dance in front of a bunch of people. And that is a more fitting punishment, I would say.
Now,
Obviously, it depends on the person because some people might like this, but he does not seem to.
now that was my thought as well, but several of the women looked more pissed off about it than anything
Well, yeah,
else.
because they're trying to make money, and now he's on stage, so they can't make money.
So then maybe that's not the best punishment, you know, for that situation.
I mean, it's not the
But
best for everybody
well, I mean,
involved, but it may be the best for that particular guy.
maybe it's just if the problem is something he's doing to the girls, don't do something that also punishes the girls.
I don't know. He's
What do you
not the world's best boss, but that was a
No,
clever way of
no, it's
dealing with the
not.
situation.
Fair
Um,
enough.
so we in this movie, I think Nick Cage is as intimidating as he is in any movie we've ever watched. I mean, he gets very scary up in people's faces, even with this unrealistic goatee. You know, that is, or I shouldn't say unrealistic, but ridiculous goatee,
Ridiculous, yeah.
over the top goatee. I mean, when he is in somebody's face and is full on like being Nick Cage, he is very intimidating.
Yeah, I agree. I still think that maybe like Face Off, he's a little more intimidating.
Maybe, but I mean, that's talking the Holy Trinity. So you're talking the
Yeah,
top tier of Nick Cage movies. I mean, as far as movies we've watched on the podcast, it's probably the most intimidating we've seen him.
yeah. No, I think you're right.
So somewhere in here, he asks, or Jimmy makes a comment about Nick Cage's business
Yeah.
that is way out of character, and Nick Cage's character immediately picks up on it.
Well, he's
That
asking about there's this guy there from the DMV at the club who some other dude told him that like this guy gets them like the titles for all the cars they steal,
right.
right?
And so little Junior Brown knows that this is a weird question for somebody to ask and instantly gets suspicious of him. So Jimmy excuses himself to the bathroom, realizing that he's probably crossed this line, and immediately rips the wire he was wearing off and throws it out the window just in time for Nick Cage to bust in there with his guys and accuse him of being a snitch and trying to rip open his shirt to find the wire and everything else. So, man, that was perfect timing.
It's a really good scene, and I think it's important because it shows that Little Junior is a smart guy. He might be
Yeah.
nuts, but he's also sharp.
He might be a jock, but yeah, he's clever and he knows what's going on.
Hmm.
He's been in the business. His papa didn't raise no fool.
That's right.
Um, so yeah, he takes it. He's apologetic and he says, "I'm going to take you with me on this. You know, we're going to talk, whatever." And so he takes him out in his car, which is a Camaro SS, by the way, like a '60s Camaro SS. But he starts asking about if he knows what acronyms are.
Yeah, such a great conversation.
And Jimmy's like, yeah. And he's like, well, I like to use acronyms too. This is actually kind of, good. It's a good way of possibly dealing with things for people. But he said he likes to use acronyms to like establish his goals and like make him remember what he's working towards, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so he tells him that his acronym is BAD. Do you remember what that stands for, Derek?
I don't remember.
You don't. What's the B? You know the B.
Really?
Really?
I don't remember.
Balls.
Right.
It's balls, remember. Attitude, direction.
Right.
BAD. That's which does come into play later in the movie, so it's important to remember that. But that's his acronym, and he tells Jimmy to come up with his own acronym. And I can't remember what it was. It was like DOA or something like that, Dead on Arrival, or
it wasn't. It was something that he didn't like. He was like, "Nah, it's too negative."
It was depressing. Yeah, it was depressing. And clearly, Little Junior is trying to be more positive in his life. So good on him. Yeah. Despite being an asshole, he's at least trying to maintain a positive outlook. So he tells, they stop, and he tells Jimmy to get out of the car and open the trunk and get the stuff out of the trunk. So he opens the trunk, and what's in the trunk, Derek? Do you remember?
A bear.
A bunny.
Was it a bunny? I thought it was a bear.
It was a white bunny.
Was it a bunny? Son of a bitch.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, a bunny. That's a reference. Because obviously Con Air.
Well, but the movie
Put
has,
the
yeah,
bunny back in the box. I mean, it's only a connection now. It was not a
yeah,
connection then, but
right.
yeah, for us watching it now, it was fun. Um, so they're
Look at you in
meeting.
the details.
I know, right? I'm in the weeds on this one. I liked this movie. What can I say? I had fun. But Omar, they're meeting up with Omar, who is Ving Rhames' character, and they're delivering the titles for some cars,
Hmm.
essentially, that are parked alongside the street here. And Ving Rhames says that he'll take all the cars except the Explorer. And it's because he hates red cars.
He hates red
Red in general.
in
He hate,
general.
but also red cars
Yeah,
are red. So yes, he hates red cars
right. But
because of that. But yes.
yes,
Um yeah, so he doesn't take the Explorer, but he takes all the other cars. And so after Omar leaves with the titles or whatever, Little Junior's like, "You don't got no problem with red cars, do you?" And and Jimmy's like, "No." He's like, "Well, that Explorer's yours then."
yeah. So like in the same night, he goes from wanting to kill this dude because he thinks he's wearing a wire to here, have a car.
Right. Exactly.
That happened a little fast for me.
It was weird, yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
like
he's an emotional guy,
yeah,
okay?
yeah, that's true. Really wears his
Um,
heart on his sleeve.
yeah, and at some point during this, he has the conversation about how he has to use this asthma inhaler,
Right. Yeah.
because it feels like he's breathing through a straw,
Yeah, the
and
dude's got
so
asthma.
you know, in this moment, you're like, oh, that's clearly foreshadowing for something that's going to happen with the inhaler later, and we'll get to that, whether or not that was in fact foreshadowing, but.
I thought it
Um,
was kind of cool though. It's pretty rare that like an imposing big bad guy is given some type of, I don't know, some type of like
disability.
disability, right? Like that's just not a common thing that
It gives the
happens.
audience something to connect with the villain, I
Well, it
guess.
just, I mean, maybe, but I think it just makes him a little unique. He's not some like invincible bad guy. Like he's a dude,
With asthma.
who's got problems like everybody else.
It's true.
I don't know. I like that part.
Yeah, I did too. So I can't remember who has this. I think
Mm.
maybe it's his daughter. He like goes into the house after getting this Explorer, and there's it's his wife. She's sitting at a desk with a fish tank on it.
Yeah.
And this fish tank is disgusting. Did you notice that? So
I mean,
it's like a 15-gallon fish tank or something, and it's like just goldfish in it.
mhm.
No decorations, no nothing, just the goldfish. And there's a tube going into it, like you would use to pump air into a fish tank, so they can breathe. But the tube has nothing coming out. So you're left wondering, because of how dirty this fish tank is with no air, how many goldfish have died for them to film this scene.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
You noticed that though, right? Like at
We
least the
should.
fact that the tank was dirty.
I was waiting to find something in like the fun facts about like PETA being mad about it or something like that,
It
but
was it was just a gross fish tank,
it
like
just also
neglected.
there was no reason for it to be there. It never comes up.
Yeah, it's just a decoration, but they needed live fish for it, I
I
guess.
guess,
And
yeah.
nobody was like, maybe we should put a filter on this just so that it doesn't look quite as gross. Like these are the most neglectful people in the world.
Well,
They
like
left a daughter unattended earlier. Now they have
oh
fish
man.
that they're just not giving air to
Well, I
or
guess that's the way they handle the daughter. If that's how they handle a human daughter, it's no wonder the goldfish aren't really paid attention to.
right. That's true. So then we get a scene of them showing Jimmy how they switch VIN plates on cars,
Yeah,
and then go blow up cars. This was actually switching VIN plates has been a common thing in the past in America and
yeah,
probably the rest of the world. But it was interesting seeing that in a movie. I don't know if I've seen that in a movie. They actually show them like drilling out the VIN plate and putting a
yeah.
new one on, and then going and disposing of the other car. So I thought that was interesting. And when they go, and this is another, we talked about the stuntman earlier. When they go and blow up this car, I'm pretty sure that was a real Molotov that he threw because it hits the car and it wasn't CGI flames. The
Yeah.
flames just ignite where the alcohol hit on the car. It's not like they could have pre-planned that.
No, I think it looks it looks very real. Like this is a very practical movie. It probably didn't have a huge budget, but it has a stacked cast, and so they just had to pay all the people. It just feels very grounded.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting that they would give him a real Molotov to throw. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
maybe they. I mean, I don't know. He had to have something on fire to throw to make this work. I guess unless they lit a spark off the screen or something, but it sure looked very real. So
yeah.
kudos to whoever did it, whether it was real or not. I thought it was interesting to see what looks like a real Molotov on screen. Um, so we get another scene with Nick Cage and Jimmy going out again, and he's wired up trying to get Nick Cage to admit to something.
Hmm.
And so they go out and they're supposed to be meeting up with Omar again. And so he tells Jimmy to go and ask Omar some question through the passenger window. So as he's doing so, Nick Cage character walks up and blasts him in the face with a gun. And so casual murder, I threw that in there if we hadn't already gotten that, because there was some casual murder earlier.
Yep.
But yeah, casual murder, which is a square on our bingo card. After, and all this is on tape because he's wired up, but then
Right.
he goes to drive away with Nick Cage's character, and he admits to him that he hates silverware. So if he wasn't grounded enough by the asthma, now he has the very common people hating silverware connection to the audience too. He admits that he uses only plastic silverware
Hmm.
because metal silverware, he hates the taste of metal in his mouth.
It makes him gag.
It makes him gag.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. And so, yeah, he admits to him for some reason, and
He's trying to connect with Jimmy. Like honestly, like it legitimately looks to me like Little Junior wants a friend,
yeah, I agree.
right?
And because when he drops him off in the next scene, he says like, "We should get out and talk about stuff,
Yeah, like life and
we should
stuff.
hang out and talk about life and stuff." Yeah,
Yeah. Like I feel like this dude is just reaching out desperately for companionship at this point.
right. Yeah. So he drops him off and then leaves, and uh, Jimmy goes to a payphone, which was the thing that existed in the 90s, to call the police, and he gets abducted
By
into like
Omar's
a
guys.
van. We
Yeah.
don't know who it is at this point, but he
Oh
gets
well,
abducted.
the guys who
And
grab
then,
him at the phone are Omar's guys. We saw them earlier.
oh yeah, that's true. They were,
Yeah.
but they were like, he thought they were like part of his posse.
Right.
But then
Yes.
when they throw him into the car, there's a guy in like a business suit in the front,
Yeah.
which is not. None of the mafia people have been shown to wear a business suit
Just the lawyer.
of any kind. Yeah, just the lawyer. So they take him to this area, and I was like, oh, okay, well, clearly this guy is a federal agent or some sort of police officer or something. And yeah, it turns out that Omar was an undercover officer, and
A
that
Fed.
a Fed, and that they didn't tell local law enforcement about that, because they had they had like a person they were trying to, I can't remember, they called him a CW or something, um, to that they were trying to get to him to admit to a crime, essentially.
Right.
And so because of that, this guy got murdered. Um, and so Nick gets arrested because they have it on recording.
Hmm.
And his lawyer, who we've seen several times up to this point, is like the lawyer for this mob or gang or whatever, and he's very good.
Oh yeah,
He
he's
is
great.
the biggest scumbag you've ever seen, but he knows how to manipulate the system, and so he gets Nick out.
But like
Um,
in this particular case, we kind of find out along with the lawyer that like actually the feds were probably doing shit they weren't supposed to be doing.
right, yeah, he was doing cocaine and illegal illicit activities
Yeah.
as while he was posing as a mob person.
Well, but on top of that, like they won't unseal certain things that the judge is asking for, and the lawyer is kind
Right,
of figuring like, now does that mean you guys weren't on the level, doing stuff
right.
you weren't supposed to be doing? You know, like he's a little smug about it, but he's got an interesting point.
It's true. So when he gets arrested, he gets punched in the face by the cops. Not that that's really important, but when he comes out of jail, he has his nose brace on, and it makes him look so fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah.
Unhinged. He
Oh
looks
yeah.
crazy as shit with his nose brace on. Um, and so they've got Jimmy now in witness protection type of situation where they're moving him from place to place with his family and trying to keep him safe from the gang or mafia or whatever it is. And so he complains about how he's going crazy, and around this time, Samuel L. Jackson is with him and is seeing him interact with his daughter and interact with his wife and everything, and he starts to like realize this guy's a real person and that they actually have more in common than he thought. And he offers to bring his daughter with him the next day to play with Jimmy's daughter, which was nice. um the girl is playing outside sometime after this, and one of the officers that's supposed to be watching her. There's two girls that pull up in a what appears to be like a 93 5.0 liter Fox Body Mustang,
Maybe.
which is relevant to the story.
Very deeply.
Well, it made me instantly suspicious. So, because first of all, I'm not trying to pigeonhole anybody, but oftentimes when you saw that particular car, it was not two women that looked the way these women did driving this car. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it was uncommon. And so that should have been right away, boom, to the Fed. But instead, he was just entranced by these attractive women driving up in this 5-liter Mustang. I mean, that's how you get to a Fed's heart. You drive up in a nice car with two attractive women, and they instantly forget they're supposed to be watching this like 6-year-old girl or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he goes to talk to them. They're asking for directions or whatever. And then when he walks back, the girl is gone. She's been abducted. So yeah, there's like a big manhunt through like the woods and stuff to find this girl, to find the daughter.
Yep.
I thought Nick was going to take her like as a prisoner or something, as like a bargaining chip, because that's what movies have led me to believe that would happen. But that's not what happens. They find the daughter out in the woods playing with like a doll or something, and across her head, really neatly drawn, is BAD, which, if you remember earlier, was Nicolas Cage's acronym. Balls, attitude, direction.
I mean, this is the second time that Little Junior has bucked the tropes of these movies.
Yeah.
Which is just interesting. It helps kind of keep me on my feet. Because look, we've watched a lot of movies. We've reviewed a lot of movies. At some point, you just instinctively guess what's going to happen.
Right.
It's nice to be wrong.
I agree. Yeah, that's probably why I enjoyed this movie more than I anticipated I would. So when this happens, obviously Jimmy takes this as a threat.
Yeah.
They know where he's at. They know how to get to him. And so he goes and buys a gun on the streets of the city. He just like hands the guy money, and he drives up to the next block, and somebody just like throws a gun in his passenger seat and walks away, with the serial numbers shaved off or whatever. And so he's going after Jimmy. But he goes back to his apartment first, and on the door is BAD in the same like colors and font that the daughter's forehead had. They use the same stencil
Font
between the two. Yeah, I'm really into fonts these days. I don't know what's going on. Apparently,
I think that's just handwriting when
yeah, maybe
in the real world.
I don't know. It looks like they used a stencil because it was very unique. It's like graffiti calligraphy, essentially. Yeah, so we find out how corrupt the DA is. I don't remember the exact circumstances. Maybe you do, Derek, but he is willing to let Nick Cage's character go for a seat as a federal judge. Or no, it was was it Nick Cage he was willing to let go, or was it something with the feds?
No, it was the whole thing. So basically what happened is it turned out the feds were going to have to drop all of their charges. And because in order to push forward the indictment, they would have to unseal some records that they've more or less admitted will show that they're doing things they're not supposed to be doing. And so they have to drop the indictment, and the DA, Stanley Tucci's character, could push forward with it, but then he's not really making any friends, and he basically makes a deal with the feds that if he keeps his mouth shut and does not pursue an investigation, he gets to be a judge.
Right, a federal judge.
So it's just a bunch of, again, right, like even the so-called good guys are also just sleazy assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
in some ways, they could even be considered a little worse because there's no code here. They're just screwing everybody.
Right, at least there's a code with the other guys.
So
we get a scene next with Jimmy calling on a payphone again, Samuel L. Jackson's character, and saying, "How quick can you be at the bare ass or whatever the club is called?"
Baby
It's
cakes, man.
Baby Cakes. Yeah, I mean it's an equally as creative name
That's hilarious.
for a strip club. So he's like, "How quick can you get here?" He's like, "Oh, 20 minutes." And he's like, "Okay, well, you better not be late," and hangs up.
It's
And
New
so
York City, guys. Well,
Samuel
it's
Jackson's
Queens,
character's
but
like, "Oh, I'm tired of these motherfuckers in the strip club," or something like that. And so he starts heading to the strip club, and meanwhile, Jimmy walks straight in and confronts Junior about this whole thing. And during this fight, they start fighting, whatever, and Junior threatens his kid, which was obviously a big no-no. And around this time is where you're like, the tropey movie watcher in you is like, okay, this is where the asthma is going to come in. He's going to start having an asthma attack and drop the asthma pump, whatever it is, the
inhaler.
yeah, that thing, asthma pump, and then the guy's gonna like smash it or something, and the guy's gonna die because he can't breathe. Well, that kind of happens. He does like have a hard time breathing and drops the inhaler, but he takes the inhaler and inhales it, and he's fine. So,
Well, but our friend from before who got to dance on stage, he's at the club again,
yeah,
and he kicks the gun back to Jimmy
yeah,
because I guess he's mad at Little
that's
Junior for
Junior,
making
yeah,
him dance on stage. So he gets involved. Like, what the fuck is he still doing there? I don't know, but
right. So yeah, the fight ends, and they arrest Junior, and we get another scene with Stanley Tucci where Jimmy is confronting him because okay, so I guess we didn't mention this earlier in the movie, but when Jimmy is talking to, when he gets the thing with his parole, he asks Stanley Tucci's character if he's a man of his word because he
a
said
man
he'll
of
do
honor.
this, a man of honor. If he does this, that he'll leave him be and not keep asking him to do more shit. And he says, "Yeah, of course I am," or whatever. Well, he comes back and says that to him now and says, like, "I thought you were a man of honor, blah, blah, blah." And then immediately blackmails him into doing something else, into prosecuting or whatever. So while Jimmy is implying that he's a man of honor, he immediately blackmails somebody, making him not really a man of honor.
No, none of them are.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing. I
It's
mean,
just implied. You're assuming that because of this code
right.
and all this stuff that he is a man of honor, but
I
no.
mean,
Turns out in the end he's not. He's just a blackmailing asshole like everybody else.
yeah, exactly. Like they're all terrible. They're all terrible. And what's funny to this is like I'm curious how they would remake this movie today because the way the wires work in this movie is they're recorded locally on the
Yeah,
person, right? And so he just has these tapes.
and if you can't get
Whereas
to the tapes, then you're just out of luck.
right, whereas like in modern times, like that's transmitted somewhere.
Right, it's recorded
Right.
wirelessly. Yeah,
Yeah, in the cloud or whatever, you know. And so like it's just interesting. I wonder how they would handle that now.
yeah,
And I guess I never saw the 1947 version, which probably didn't include wires.
probably not.
So
So while he's talking to Tucci's character, he's like, "Well, I'm going to disappear, but this is what you need to do. Listen to this tape; it'll explain everything." And he's like, "Okay, I'm leaving now." And then he just like walks away to the Red Explorer, which is stolen and given to him by a criminal that is now in federal penitentiary.
well, no,
He
well,
drives away.
that's the thing. We don't really know what happens
We
to Little
assume
Junior.
it's implied that he just gave him evidence enough to lock him up. But yeah, he drives away in the stolen Ford Explorer that he was given. I was like, okay, that's, I guess, fine. Everybody's an asshole, so why not? Just keep it. But that's the movie.
And that's it. That's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
That was the end of the movie. There was a part early on where Jimmy's talking about how you can boost cars or whatever, and he's like, "Yeah, I could do it in 90 seconds." And I was like, "Yeah, well, Nick's gonna do it in 60 seconds in a couple of years." So
My
you know.
girlfriend that I watched it with said the same thing. You aren't that special, Derek.
Thank you, Marcy. Yeah, no, but that's the movie. That's
Yep.
the. I mean, I guess the closest person to like the closest people that are decent people are Rosie, the babysitter turned wife, as weird as that is. She's still like a nice person seemingly. And Samuel L. Jackson's character, like, I think he has a right to be mad originally, but he kind of like warms up over time and becomes a pretty decent dude by the end of the film. Those are really, I think, the only two, other than Helen Hunt's character, which doesn't survive the first act.
Right. That's accurate. Yeah.
You know, so that's it. That's the movie. Um, I guess now we have to rate our movie, and so we have our Cage-O-meter, where we rate our films on a score of 0 to 20. 0 low, 20 high. We rate overall quality and overall caginess of the films, and so we're gonna do that. Ryan, you seem very happy with this movie, so I want to see where are you going to put this on your overall quality rating? Where does this go for you?
What was the trust? What did we rate the trust
The
at?
Trust, you gave The Trust a 15.
Yeah,
I
it
gave it
wasn't
a
quite as
14.
good. It wasn't quite as good as the trust.
Okay.
But I did enjoy it tremendously compared to most of the other movies that we've watched. So I was going to put it at like a 13.
Really? That's what you gave
Yeah.
Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh, is it? Then I probably a 12, I guess, would be fair.
A 12?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it almost as much as I would enjoy rewatching Gone in 60 Seconds, but maybe not quite as much.
See, that's interesting. So I like Gone in 60 Seconds, but I think from a quality standpoint, I actually think this was a better overall film. And so I was actually going to give this, I'm going to give it a 13 because I gave The Trust a 14, and I do think The Trust was better. So I'm going
What
to
did
give
you
this a
give Gone in
13.
60 Seconds?
I gave Gone in 60 Seconds a 12.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this sandwiches it right
You're
between.
you're saying that this is better than Gone in 60 Seconds.
I think so.
Okay.
From a
Fair enough.
quality standpoint, I think Gone in 60 Seconds is more fun. It's a more
Yeah.
lighthearted film. It's nowhere near as serious. I'll be able to watch it with my kid a lot sooner than I can watch this one.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, but yeah, I think this one was really well done. I thought it was extremely well acted. It's got some problems, of course, but I
Did you
liked it.
notice that Junior's girlfriend in this movie was Nick Cage's wife in The Weatherman?
I did. He had a girlfriend in this?
Yeah. The one
Who's
he
his
was like
girlfriend?
bench pressing.
Is that his girlfriend?
I mean, that's what she was credited as.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't see
Yeah.
her in the credits. Okay, well that's cool.
Hope Davis. Yeah.
She she's in
She
here
played as
somewhere.
Weatherman. Yeah, she's pretty far down.
She's okay.
Anyway, we gotta rate the Cage-O-meter next. And
No,
since I
that's
went
great.
first on the quality standpoint, you have to go first on the Cage-O-meter, which I think is a much harder.
Yeah. I mean, this is tough, right? Like there's certainly some moments. It's nothing crazy or anything like that. So it's nothing that like I'm gonna score super high.
Right, but you have to remember
Um,
his accent.
he does have the accent through the whole thing. He does.
He
He's got
does
like a
beat the shit out of somebody to a Jump Around soundtrack.
he does. He's got the swagger too. He's got the acronym
Right.
conversations.
He's got the bulked out arms.
He does. He does. So I mean, there's stuff in here, but I don't want to go too high. So I'm actually thinking. I'm gonna go with like a 10.
So you're saying this is an average amount of Nick Cage caginess.
Yeah, I think so. I think a 10 seems fair.
Okay.
Why? Where are you putting it?
I'm saying 11.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I just
Cool.
think it's like a notch above where what I would consider his average
That's fair.
genius.
That's certainly fair. Okay. Well, there you go. So there you have it. A 12 and a half on quality and a 10 and a half on caginess. And now we got to figure out which movie is going to join our Wheel O' Cage. This, of course, is what we spin to find out what Nicolas Cage movie we talk about next. This is not the spin, but to find out which movie joins the wheel. Oh, and it's 2023's Renfield
About time.
joins the wheel. So to find out which Nicolas Cage movie we're going to talk about next time on the show, go to comingofcage.com or follow us at Coming of Cage on all the social medias. And you can watch us on YouTube, on the Derrico Studios YouTube channel. We have our show up there. We have our Wheel o' Cage. We have our Cage-O Bingo series as well on all of that good stuff. You can subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice. We are everywhere out there. Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Music.
Oh boy.
YouTube podcasts.
Yay.
We're there. You can find us.
Can't wait.
Ryan, anything else for Kiss of Death?
What's the what?
What's the what? Here I have one final question for you, Ryan. What was the kiss of death?
Cage's fists.
Cage's fists. I thought it might just be
the song Jump Around.
Knowing Jimmy, I thought might really be what it is. As soon as you get close to Jimmy, you're done.
Yep, that's true.
That's what I was thinking.
Dead.
All right. That's it. We're out of here. Thanks for listening.
What's the what?